if I had to tell you what part I was looking forward to the most from the entirety of ReZero Season 2, or aka Arc 4 of the series, it would have to be the Amelia flashback scene. And at long last, we have the Amelia flashback. This episode dives deep into Amelia's origin point and gives us a lot of context to things that have been up in the air since Season 1. This episode, there is not enough words I could say that can express how much I loved this episode. When I was reading this in the web novel, I remember seeing images flashing in my head of how this scene might look. And seeing it for myself, seeing this episode animated for myself, it was everything but more. And I am just so pleased with this episode of ReZero that, once again, words cannot express just how happy I am with this episode. But if there is one thing that is very interesting about this episode, I think that everybody's going to be talking about it, and it's going to probably take the spotlight away from Amelia herself. Even though this was her episode to a degree, I think many are going to be talking about Juice, our boy Sloth from ReZero Season 1. An iconic character, easily one of my favorite characters of the entirety of ReZero, for good reason. He is such a interesting character, he is so lively, and I mean, when it came to his introduction in the anime, I think many can agree, the voice actor, which by the way was Kirito, the voice actor Kirito voices, Juice. The thing is that when you hear his voice actor for the first time, you're just like, whoa, is this really the same person as Kirito? But also just the life in the character, the animations, the movements, there's just so much about him, you're just like, wow, this is such a crazy character, and I want more of him. He was such a good villain, the conclusion of Season 1. And seeing him once again, but from a different perspective, I think is going to throw many for a loop. Like, what in the hell happened to this man? Because, like, when you look at this character we saw in this episode, and then you look back at what he used to look like, you're like, how's this the same person? It's obviously the same person. They go by the same name. They look very similar. Just one looks obviously more decrepit and crazy, while the other one looks normal. And it's such an interesting take on Juice, because every time we have seen his character up to this point, he was crazy. He's legitimately unhinged by all regards. You don't even know what he will do next, which made him so cool to see on screen. And now seeing him look relatively normal, but have certain similar tics that he had throughout Season 1 is kind of interesting and unnerving at the same time. And I feel like just seeing all of this animated, it once again just makes my love for this series just grow ever stronger. So let's get into a lot of details on this, because this is something I really have been wanting to talk about, and I'm so happy I could finally just open the floodgates and talk about Juice and how he is in Amelia's past. I could finally express my feelings on this matter, so let's get right into it. So, obviously, looking at Juice's character, he is someone that is affiliated with Amelia's homeland, the elves. He is someone that was delivering clothes, someone that was delivering goods, food, etc. to this entire village. He was a relatively good person, at least from the elf's perspective, at least how they know of him. He was a good guy. He kept coming to town, he would give them clothes, he would give them food, he would always be there diligently to make sure they have everything they actually need. Now, we don't necessarily know how Juice was outside of the village. We don't know if he was relatively a good guy, a bad guy, if he was like how he was throughout Season 1. We're not really given any context on that matter whatsoever. We don't really know how he was outside of Amelia's village. However, we can clearly see that he is definitely the same person, but mentally he is not. You can see that something happened. Something warped him to such a degree to turn him into the monstrosity that was Sloth in Season 1 of ReZero. The question is, what actually caused it? And it's very clear that we're probably going to get some answers to this in this little brief flashback of Amelia's, because something happened in Amelia's past that holds a lot of significance, something that has caused her to constantly have her mind break over and over in the previous loops of ReZero Season 2. So it looks like we're finally going to be diving into that point of what necessarily happens, and probably what happens to, Amelia's hometown, but also what happens to Sloth, and also what happens to Fortuna and what is her outcome, where is she at right now. There is a lot of things that potentially might be getting answered in the upcoming episodes, but for now though, let's focus on the things we do know. One of the big things we do know now is why Amelia cried in episode 23 of ReZero. I want to show images on screen so you don't have to go back and watch it for yourself, but if you do, it's literally like towards the end of the episode 23 of ReZero Season 1. You have it to where Amelia actually finishes off Juice. She kills one of his, duplicates where he possessed another body, and you see that she puts him in a solid ice crystal state. And then after that scene is done, she starts to cry. There's no explanation, there's no words about it. It just looks like from that scene, if you had no idea what Amelia's past was, and you were just watching the series, you would assume that Amelia, she just doesn't like killing. She doesn't like hurting other people, and she just took someone's life, and she didn't want to have to do that, but she had to force her hand. That's what you would get from the tears she's shown in episode 23 of ReZero. However, now knowing what's going on in her past, it's very clear that even though Amelia had her memories completely sealed and she wasn't able to remember who Juice was, Sloth, she remembered deep within her very soul, and that is why she cried. This gives a lot of context to that scene in episode 23, showing that there is definitely a deep connection between the two characters, and it's very clear they have a deep connection. I mean, Amelia said it herself. Fortuna and Juice were acting like a mother and father. They were mother and father to Amelia, which is incredibly whoa, wait a minute, what? Juice was acting like the father figure to Amelia, and when you look at the events of Season 1, he was hunting down Amelia and trying to kill her, and he did effectively kill her a few times throughout Season 1. So it's how did a father figure, such a good man that seems to really care about Amelia, turn into something like that? That's a huge question. But on top of that, when did he actually meet Satla? Because we do know in the final moments before he actually died in Season 1, he's like, Satla, even though you have forgotten, I will always remember. He starts crying it out to Subaru before, he disappears. So it's very interesting. It makes you wonder exactly what happened between the events of Amelia's past to the events of Season 1's beginning. So many questions are forming and building because of that. So, let's go a couple steps further. I find it very interesting how the wording of this scene is, with Fortuna's be safe, stay safe out there, and you have Juice's hey, what you just said will help me carry me through the next 100 years of turmoil. And I find that very ironic, because it's basically been stated Amelia is been frozen for over 100 years, and that he has been wandering around, Juice has been wandering around for over 100 years to the point of Season 1, so you're just wait a minute, that's definitely a nod to just the tragedy of his backstory and kind of what happens to him, so he's going to be suffering probably for the next 100 years because of whatever is happening on this day. So I find that ironic. That's a nice little nod to foreshadowing, but also the nod to just what he does become in the future. Another thing too is the crying scene he had with Amelia. This is something I think that many are easily going to miss upon watching this episode, but if you go back to, Season 1 and watch some key scenes, you will see when he encounters Amelia or he encounters Sato when he possesses Subaru, you see Juice get happy. He starts to smile, and then he cries. And it's only when he sees these two individuals, and now it kind of makes a lot of sense. When you see, when he looks upon Amelia in the flashback, he starts to cry. He's like, I have been redeemed. I have, me such as a sinner has truly found happiness and greatness. It's a really important scene, and this scene is a lot more contextual now to what happened in Season 1, when he started to cry, when he saw Satla or he saw Amelia and all that for the ordeal. This has so much more meaning to it now when you just look at how his character acts throughout it. This is why it's very important to rewatch ReZero. That's why I went out of my way to rewatch ReZero before Season 2 came out, because of just how intertwined the story is. Every little piece of the story is just slowly falling into place, and you're starting to understand the events that happened in the previous episodes, you're like, holy crap, it's been in your face the entire time. You really had no idea. Like, there's certain scenes throughout Season 2's first half, before Rosewall, showcases the gospel he has, you'll see where the camera pans towards the bed, or towards, like, his eyes looking down to where the gospel would be. There's little moments throughout that in the first half of Season 2 that does that too. So, like, there's so many things you can easily miss, and this is stuff, when you go back to watch the series, you'll be able to cherish the juice scenes even more. So, okay, enough with that, though. I guess let's actually talk about another key point, and that is Regulus popping up at the end of the episode. So, Regulus is in the past 100 years ago. So we don't know necessarily what he is. We don't know if he's an elf, a spirit, just a human that has a really long lifespan. We don't really know exactly what he is. We just know that he is someone that is definitely intertwined in Amelia's past, but now also with Subaru. And now, as a reminder, if you have forgotten, we have met Regulus before. We met him in the first episode of Season 2. He was the individual that basically broke the camel's back for Rim. When Rim was fighting Gluttony, and then she had her memories and very existence stolen from her, Regulus was also there, and he was the one that kind of forced Rim to finally fall, and Gluttony managed to steal everything from her. So that is the connection Regulus has with the main cast. It isn't just him intertwined with Amelia, he's also affiliated with Subaru. So he's an incredibly important character, and he's definitely being built up as, like, a really big villain material. I mean, the whole Witch's Cult is basically villain material, but I mean, Regulus is obviously being built up, especially with just him appearing at the end of this episode. Which, by the way, him appearing, that OST, oh my god, like, yo, that OST for Regulus, is that his theme song? Like, legitimately, is that Regulus' theme song? That is such a good OST. Like, I need that in my life. Like, I legitimately need that OST in my life. I'm like, please, I need to find this. I need to find this. If it's somewhere, I'm going to need to find it, because that was a good song. Like, holy crap. But, speaking of OST, once again, no opening song or ending song. While we did get the ending song, we got to hear it, we just had no visuals. And at this point, it's a myth. The opening and ending song is just a straight up myth. Like, there's no visuals whatsoever. Like, imagine being the person that composes the opening and ending song of ReZero, and you're like, oh, I get to be a part of ReZero, and all of a sudden, you do it, and then the season comes out, and you're like, wait a minute, you didn't show the opening song. Just imagine being that person, just like, oh my goodness, like, it's hilarious to me just how many episodes go on by of ReZero, and there's no opening. Like, we're like we're 4 episodes in to Season 2's second half, and there has been no showing of an opening song, and I've kind of figured out maybe what the reason is. I thought that the opening song might play for this episode, but now actually thinking about it, it makes sense why it didn't. So here is my theory on why the opening isn't actually playing for ReZero. And that is the fact the opening song probably has a lot of visual spoilers. Probably a lot to do with Amelia's past that we're about to see. And I feel like the time of when the opening song is going to show is the when it actually will show maybe the development of Amelia, the growth of everything going on, the backstories of whatever happened with Sloth, etc. And I feel like that's when the opening song will play. Because think about this. When we look back at, Season 2's first half, the opening song Realize didn't appear until Echidna formally appeared. That's when the opening song started to play, and I feel like that's kind of what maybe, White Fox is trying to do. Maybe they're wanting to have the opening song appear at just the right moment when the visuals really represent what is going on within the song, like the music and everything just really syncs right up. I feel like that's probably what is being hinted towards. I could be wrong, but I feel like maybe in the next episode, we're probably going to get the opening song. Once again, I could be wrong. So, okay. Anyways, with Regulus popping up and all that, and obviously leading to some form of confrontation, does, Juice know him, since technically they both are a part of the Witch's Cult. We don't really know if, Sloth is actually Sloth at the moment in the flashback, or if he is going to join thanks to his encounter with Regulus. We really have no idea whatsoever. But the major point, though, is that Regulus, he's definitely going to lead to some form of conflict. Question is, what is actually going to happen? Now, let's back up let's talk about Amelia. So Amelia's backstory obviously is just getting dived into. It's still very vague. We don't really know a whole lot of everything really going on. There's a lot of mystery, which is for good reason. I mean, ReZero has had a lot of questions. It has had some answers, well, a lot of questions. And I feel like this flashback is definitely going to give a lot more questions than answers, especially for this episode. I mean, let's look at the sill, the door. I feel like everyone that has watched Full Metal Alchemist, upon seeing the door that Amelia looked at, is probably going to be reminded of the door in Full Metal. I feel like many will be like, whoa, that looks like the door in Full Metal Alchemist. Well, what's going on here? What is this sill? What is those engravings on the door? There's so many questions. It's such a mysterious and weird door that Amelia looks upon. What is really behind that? And it's going to get your mind really starting to think, what is behind that? Because you have this entire little field around it is frozen in ice. And from what we know is that we always assume maybe Puck or Amelia was the cause of the snow that's happened throughout, season 1 and partially season 2. But when you see that, it's like, what is that? Is that maybe Puck? Is that Puck behind that door? Is it something else? Or who is behind that door? What is behind that door? That is the question you're led towards when you see that scene. There's so much, atmosphere around that. Then you have the stuff with Amelia being locked within the room, this princess tower. And it makes you wonder, why? What's the need for Amelia being locked away within this tower? You see how Fortuna, which is obviously trying to be a good mother figure, she isn't the actual mother of Amelia, but she's trying to be a good mother figure. She locks Amelia up in this room, and it doesn't seem like she's being malicious about it. She's not trying to be mean. It really does look like she cares about Amelia deeply, that she wants Amelia to have a good life. The question is, why is she locking Amelia up in this room? Why is she not allowed to leave the room when Sloth or Juice is there? There's so many questions. And then you have it to where she's able to sneak out, and these, lesser spirits are leading her the way to be able to do things and all that, and, do bad things that are probably not what Fortuna wants her to do. It's like, what's going on here? Why is, this happening? Why is she locked in this room? Is it because she is tied to this sill? Is Amelia somehow affiliated with the sill itself? And if, let's say, Amelia's not in good health, maybe the sill will be undone. Maybe that's the reason why Juice wanted to get rid of her in season 1. If she, dies, maybe that sill opens up. Or has the sill already opened up? Because we know the entire forest was frozen and people were frozen solid, and Amelia was too. And eventually she became unfrozen and she found Puck. So there's so many things about this. It's just mystery questions, and obviously in due time they will definitely be answered. So, one thing that does need to be talked about, and I know I've been saying it, but it needs to be said, Puck appears at the beginning of this episode, and that is a scene directly from the Frozen Bond OVA. Once again, if you really do like ReZero, and you're enjoying this flashback of Amelia, and you're wanting to know more, I really urge you all to watch the Frozen Bond OVA. It's very, 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 very important for everything that we're learning within this flashback. So if you really do like this stuff, go watch that OVA. It's on Crunchyroll, wherever, just watch it. It's incredibly important for the story. So anyways, I guess let's talk about Echidna and her conversation with Amelia. So Echidna obviously shown a very venomous side to herself throughout the episode that was very distinct and different from how she interacted with Subaru for good reason. For instance, she wanted to get something from Subaru. She wanted to be able to get returned by death from Subaru, to be able to do whatever she wanted, have endless possibilities of different lifetimes, etc. That is why she was so nice to Subaru. She was trying to manipulate him. We know this now. And when you see how she interacts with Amelia, it's definitely different. She doesn't try to hide her lack of empathy. She doesn't try to hide her venomous stare and words. She's just straight up malicious to Amelia continuously throughout the episode. But then you see towards the ending part of it, she starts to quiet down. She starts to kind of not say much to Amelia whatsoever, and it makes you wonder what is the reason for that, and you could kind of see the nods of the reason why that is. It's most likely because of how she is taking after Subaru. For instance, Amelia is taking after Subaru, and Echidna realizes this, and she's like, this upsets me. The person I wanted has now given everything to Amelia, and there's nothing I can do about it. Everything that he said he was wanting to achieve, he is now achieving without my help, and what she assumed would be impossible is actually happening. Amelia is being able to overcome her trial. She's looking at this trial, not, cowering in fear. She's actually wanting to achieve it on her own strength, and not have to rely on, let's say, someone like Puck, Subaru, or, Juice. She wants to rely on her own strength to overcome whatever happened in her past. It's incredibly important, and you notice as soon as she admits this and says this type of stuff, Echidna starts to quiet down and not say much to Amelia. It seems like Echidna realizes no matter what she says, no matter what she does, nothing is going to really have an impact on Amelia's mental state and really break her down. Amelia is now kind of more fortified to deal with the situation. Instead of cowering in fear and running and crying and all that and, going crazy, she now is very independent and she is willing to walk on her own two legs. It's very powerful for Amelia's character development. We're already seeing the brief glimpse of just how she is changing within this episode after all the build-up she has gotten from Subaru and other characters from the previous episodes of Re:Zero. But I think that's pretty much about it. It's a good episode, but I feel like if I talk anymore, I'm going to accidentally dive into spoiler territory, and I do not want to do that, because this is a really good part of the story, and I don't want to do that to all of you, because this is so good, and I'll talk more in depth about all this in the upcoming episodes, but I'm going to leave it at that. I love you guys. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And leave a like. And also, hit that bell icon down below if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video. But with that, I love you guys. Be safe. Stay healthy. Chibi out.